Pojďme. Tak, 1, 2, 3, 3.
No.
Tak, půjdeme za mnou asi, pojďte.
Dobře.
Milí kolegové, přátelé, naše skvělé publikum, dneska mám zvlášť speciálního hosta. Kamaráda Johna Callow. A budu s ním mluvit anglicky a pak se dozvíte, o čem je řeč česky. Today I have a very special guest, John Callow.
It's a pleasure.
A lecturer of one of the British universities, activist of one of the British trade unions, and a man who knows life and work and production of Julia Fučíka, our Czech national hero, much better than, I would say, most of the citizens of today's Czech Republic. Welcome in Prague again.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and an honour.
John, you are coming each year, in fact. I had a pleasure to have you during 2 nice events on the occasion of round anniversaries of Julia Fučíka last year, and you are again here. What is so much attracting you to Julia Fučíka?
Well, I think Fučík is a multi-dimensional man. He was an artist, he was an activist, he was a writer of incredible depth and incredible bravery. And I think for all those reasons he speaks not just to the past, but to the future. And for all those reasons, the hope, the sacrifice, the dedication of the man, and his skill as a wonderful, evocative writer of Czech and European and world culture, he continually draws me back to him.
You summed it up in a very nice way. What is the, let's say, knowledge of Julius Fučík in Great Britain today?
Small.
Small.
There's no way to get around it. I think Fučík, rather as was the case in Czechoslovakia, his popularity peaked through the generation who had been through the Second World War and the struggle against fascism. They felt it in their bones. You didn't have to explain to them the sacrifice of the free peoples of the world against the Nazi terror. So the first edition of Fučík's writings in English was published in America rather than Britain. England had to wait a little later, 3 years later in 1951, when there was a very good translation published through one of the Communist Party presses. The political activists of that generation, 1940s, 1950s, were very familiar with Fučík, not so much afterwards. It ebbed away and really wasn't back on the radar in any way until the new English edition of his works 20 years ago appeared. So he's not well known, but he should be.
Yes. You shocked me in a positive way last time that you don't know only the most famous book, the report of a man waiting for the execution, which is, by the way, the most translated and published book of the Czech origin worldwide. But you know also the other interesting studies and articles and so on, which I understand also as a message for the future. Could you reproduce some of your ideas in this respect?
I think I can do. I was saying at a meeting last night, in the generation before Peter, Fučík's great unfinished story for an unborn son. He has this wonderful, being a historian, you immediately get it. He talks about his writings being notes to an unknown posterity, as if you were putting these into a little bottle, sealing them up, throwing them into the sea, and you never know on what shore they'll wash up. And I think that's a terrific metaphor for art, for the job of the writer, for the job of the politically engaged commentator. We don't know, but if socialism is about anything at all, it's about optimism, it's about hope. And we've got to, as he did, continually believe in casting out the bottle, in the sense that our ideas will eventually prevail.
I'm sure they will once.
Well, I think they have to. I think, as Luxemburg says, it's socialism or barbarism.
Exactly, as it was said by Engels and then by Clara Zetkin and the others. We are living in a world where there is one even more acute appeal, danger. It's a revival of fascist, neo-fascist, racist and so on trends. What's your, let's say, point of view in this respect?
Well, I think one of the fears is that fascism and racism are being normalised to a way that was unthinkable, certainly in the 1980s, in Britain and I think across mainstream Europe. The European consensus that made the European Union, for a start, whatever we may think about it, but also which bolstered the United Nations, was one that set its face firmly against fascism and guaranteed basic workers' rights. That was part of the social contract that I think everybody in Western Europe had signed up to between, certainly in the not in Spain or Portugal, but France, Germany, the Nordic countries, had signed up to between 1945 and 1979, 1980. I think the changes after that period, the triumph again of neoliberalism, the triumph of postmodernism, which is its false philosophy that establishes this idea that there is no such thing as truth.
Exactly.
And once you say there is no such thing as objective truth, everything is worth one. That is worth that, even though that is the terror of Heydrich, the false racial theories of the 19th century projected onwards. These things begin to crawl back, they begin to sprout like fresh weeds. I think the demolition by mainstream academia of the historical truth of the Second World War, writing out the struggle of the Yugoslav partisans, the Soviet Union, trying to equate communism with fascism, has given fascism a dignity and a place that it previously lacked, added to which the rise of the new nationalisms has eclipsed what were once taken as the bedrocks of a humanistic society in Europe. Once you then knock out completely the social contract with the working class, pretend that the working class no longer exists, a working class that has in many cases certainly been failed by social democracy, you have conditions of alienated people who are poor, who are oppressed and look for something. And if the left is not there, the right will be. So we're in a very, very dangerous world where, as we see in Prague, I know how you have struggled and how the party in Prague has struggled to restore these anti-fascist monuments. Now, you shouldn't have to struggle to memorialise Fučík, Czech women deputies who went to the concentration camps. But these monuments are erased and other monuments creep in to people who 20 years ago would have just been seen as fascists. So it's a very dangerous time culturally, politically and economically.
Exactly. What would be your, say, message of an enlightened man from the Great Britain with a deep knowledge about the recent history on these, let's say, historic crossroads towards the Czech people and namely Czech younger generation?
Well, I can't speak for them. I'm not young anymore. But I think the left needs to be proud of itself and its achievements again. I think it needs to own the fact that it is the truest representation of the European Enlightenment, that we walk not in the margins, not in the shallows of history or intellectual history, but in the absolute mainstream, that we are the heirs of Spinoza and Rousseau and Kant, And with that confidence comes an awful lot. You're no longer marginalised, that we have a direct input, and we need to be proud again of people like Julia Fučíka, who gave their lives to a cause that was greater than themselves, and to realise that much of the great art of the 20th century, you know, if you put on a concerto by Shostakovich, if you look at a painting by Picasso, if you listen to, you know, a poem by Nezval, if you read the report from the gallows, these are all artworks, whether directly or indirectly, were communist, Marxist inspired. So in that sense, we gave an enormous gift to European culture that we shouldn't downplay. And I was struck when I was coming here to Prague, we stopped the flight in Paris, and I bought Humanité, the French communist newspaper. And there they were taking into the national pantheon some communist partisans who'd fallen in the war. And that sense that without socialism, the fight against fascism would not have resulted in the way that it did. There was a reason that red banners fluttered over Berlin. And I think we need to take those red banners back to our heart so they fly in triumph, not in war, but in peace and through everything we do.
John, to listen to such a message from a man who is, let's say, living in the Great Britain, in a country which is regarding itself the cradle of democracy and all of this, but now it's playing the well-known role. It's giving me even more hope that people like two of us, not only two of us at all, would again convert the, let's say, that historic stream represented by the genuine left, which is not for sale, into the new mainstream of Europe.
Let's do it. Onwards. Thank you.